with all the things going on right now with the weather patterns and with the claims and with carriers seeing now they can get the rates they're getting now, why go back? I don't think we're ever going to have 99-cent gas again.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
Oh, things are going well, Lindsay. We just went through the most difficult and tumultuous way in order to get this podcast going. So I am 100% sure we're going to have a great podcast ahead of us. How's your day going, my friend?
It's going good. Hard work, high reward, I think is what this podcast is going to be today. So I'm pumped.
Heck yeah. Oh my goodness, this is so funny. Gotta love when technology works with us, right? Like, come on, people, this is ridiculous. But it was worth it because we have one of my all-time favorite people on the podcast today. We have the mayor of Insuretown himself, Mr. Heath Shearon. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What is going on? And you say that to everybody, so but that's all right.
That is not true. That is not a true statement at all. Yeah. Dude,
I love it. From the first time we actually met in person, I remember we were like, I feel like we've met like 15 times and we haven't. And so it's just funny. So, and that's been a couple of years ago now. So yeah, I feel the same way. I love everything y'all are doing. It's awesome.
You know, it's funny. I actually walked over and he was sitting at a table, not intimidating at all, with like 1 million people. It felt like 1 million people and I didn't really know any of them. And I walked over and put my hand out and said, "Hey, I'm Carey Wallace." He's like, yeah, I know who you are." It's so funny.
I know exactly who you are.
But yeah. I felt like we knew each other, but I realized as I went in that room, like we actually had never been physically in the same space. And
exactly.
I had that happen with a couple of people after COVID. I think you spend so much time on Zoom or whatever that you think that you have been in the presence of people, but you just haven't, right?
Exactly.
It's just weird. Yeah. Anyway, well, I'm really glad that you get to come on the show with us. You know, I've gotten to know you by following you on social. The fact that you do a podcast lets me get to know your personality, which is super smart. So honestly, I'd love to start there. How in the world did you become the mayor of Insuretown? Like, give me that. How did that happen?
So I grew up in the insurance industry, second generation, and I grew up going to conferences with my dad, and he's 81, still slinging insurance to this very day. And he drugged me to all these conferences as a kid. And then as I got older and got in the industry and started speaking and doing events and whatnot, I showed up at an event in Branson, Missouri. And as I was going through to get name badges and get everything set up, my name badge said mayor on it. And this is before Insuretown, before any of that. I was just a guy who was in the industry. And I was like, "Where's my name badge?" I said, "Your name is the mayor. And we always call you that because at the registration table, people come by, 'Where's Heath? Where's Heath? Is Heath here yet? Where's Heath?' And they're like, 'You must be the mayor of insurance.'" And I was like, "Okay, ha, ha, ha." And so my name badge, the rest of the convention was mayor. And my wife happened to be with me. If you ever get to know her, she won't let anything go. And so that's just been my moniker with her, and all of my friends in Arkansas has just been, well, there's the mayor. Because to your point, we were at, I guess, One City World Tour. And when we met, so it seems like that. And my wife makes fun of where I go. It's like I'm holding court or I am, mayoring.
You totally were. It was like intimidating to come over to you. I'm like, holy cow, where am I? What is this thing? Yeah.
I'm just a big old dork in this industry, but it's fun. And I love people. And so it just always fit. And so then pandemic hit and my wife was like, "All right, it's time to do it." And I was like, "What?" She was like, "YouTube channel, podcast, something. You've been wanting to do it. It's time to do it. Nothing else to do." And so I was like, "All right, fine." And at that point, I didn't know if we were shut down for life, if Jesus was coming back, or if I didn't know what was happening. I really thought it was going to be like 3 or 4 weeks and then we were going to open back up. No big deal. Mm-hmm. Who knew it was going to be what it was?
Yeah.
So, and then there was some people, at Vertiport, like yesterday, they're like, "Oh, I have COVID." I was like, "I thought COVID was over," but it's still going 4 years later.
Oh, I had COVID 2 weeks ago and was like down for the count for 2 weeks straight. Like it
Wow,
was bad. And I had COVID
dude.
before and it wasn't awful. Like I was like alive, but I was like dead for a long
Yeah.
time.
So, yeah, it's still a thing. But yeah, so during the pandemic, when we started the podcast, Stacy and I, we're talking about what to call it. She's like, just call it the Mayor's Podcast. I was like, that's stupid. And so we ended up, creating my own town so I could be the mayor. And so I elected myself mayor of Insurance Town. And so that's how that started. So it just started from a conference of people goofing with me, and it's just kind of stuck.
Well, there's two things I got to say for this. Number one, I don't know your wife. I want to know your wife. And I love that she didn't let it go and she encouraged you to do it. So hats off to her. And whatever we need to do to make that meeting happen, I would love to know the better half to the mayor for sure. And number two, you said you started in the middle of COVID and, at the middle of it, when it was happening, people thought it was going to be a 5-week thing or a 3-week thing. Like we actually took a poll and bet on how long COVID was going to last. I'll never forget it. And I was on a podcast with, oh goodness, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I was on a podcast and we were in the middle of it and we literally talked on there about it only being 5 weeks and the things that we did during that time. Like Lindsay came home, we made a TikTok together. I had never done that before. Like you were doing all kinds of silly stuff to entertain ourselves. Like I was doing a TikTok, you were creating a podcast for goodness sake. So clearly I need to up my game. Like what the heck?
I don't know about that. I think my wife's just tired of me being bored because at that point I was being homeschool dad, trying to work, trying to do something. And anyhow, it was just like, all right, do something. And so I started it just with an iPhone in my bedroom at that point. And so then it grew to having a studio and everything. But
so with my mom's recent trip to Peru, we've been spending a lot of time talking about bucket lists. What's on your bucket list? What's on my bucket list? What should we do together? What do we have in common? Was the podcast something that was like always on your bucket list of things you wanted to do in your life? Or did it just happen because of the mayor thing?
If you're an agency owner and you're thinking about selling your agency or thinking about growing by acquisition, you need to know what Cake is all about. Cake is an online marketplace designed to help buyers and sellers strategically find each other. One of the worst things you can do if you're selling one of your most valuable assets is to only talk to one buyer. Cake allows you to anonymously list a book of business or a slice or your entire agency for sale, vet those opportunities, and make sure that you've created demand for your agency and therefore the highest possible price. If you're looking to grow by acquisition, it's hard to find opportunities. Cake simplifies that process for you. I highly recommend to many of my clients that are thinking about dipping their toe into buying or selling an agency to check out Cake.
It was always kind of a bucket list thing of mine. I'd always wanted to, and it was one of those things that I just always thought, nobody's going to care what I say. Nobody wants to see this guy because I have one of those faces for radio. And so I just thought nobody wants to see that. And my wife would always be like, you've got to do it. She's been trying to get me to do it for years. And because I'd been on stages for, 10 years prior, and she's like, you've got to just do it. And I was like, I can't. And I was kind of fearful of it. And then, it seemed like, I think a lot of it, I don't know, maybe it was Sid Rowe's fault, but she was my first guest. She's been a friend of mine for years. And, first episode just, had a ton of downloads, and she was like, I told you it'd work. And so it's just kind of been one of those things. But yeah, it was always something I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to do it or what to do. And so
we have
COVID
that
kind
of
of forced
common.
me.
Sid Rowe was also our first podcast.
Oh, that's
guest.
crazy.
Yep.
That is crazy. I'd called her up in like 2019 before COVID even hit. I was like, I'm going to start a podcast one day. She goes, I'm going to be your first guest. You got to do it. Let's go. And I think she was still at Be Atomic back then. Anyhow, and so she convinced me to do it.
And now you guys sit next to each other and interview people. So between Insurance Town and the Vertifor podcast, you get to see and talk to a lot of agents. And I actually very much appreciate the opportunity to hear all kinds of different perspectives. I selfishly probably learn more by podcasting than my guests do, or our guests do, and whatever. But I guess I'm interested from your perspective from podcasting. What do you think the climate is like out there, and what is your take on the industry now and maybe where it's headed? I'd love to hear from the people that are sharing with you. What do you think that looks like?
Man, from my perspective, I think we're nowhere near the end of the hard market, whatever you want to call that. And I'm trying to see my own fingers in the video and I can't. So, but anyhow, so I got a smaller box than I thought. But no, I think that I think we're nowhere near the end. There's some people that are saying, "Oh, we're starting to soften up now, and we're going to see some changes soon." And I think they're wrong based on what I'm hearing. I think that I guess my take on it would, for me personally, would be we're never going to go back to a soft market like we had. I just think that with all the things going on right now, with the weather patterns and with the claims and with carriers seeing now they can get the rates they're getting now, why go back? Like, I don't think we're ever going to have 99-cent gas again. Lindsay, when I first started driving, it was 99 cents for gas. And yeah, and I just don't think it's just like, it's just inflation. I just don't think we're ever going to go back to that. And so that being said, there's going to have to be some adjustments. And I don't think carriers are going to go back to paying the higher commissions they were before, now that they can get away with not doing it. Mm-hmm. So I just think we have to get creative. And that's where I think the InsurTech and, data and some of this stuff's coming into play, that people are going to find other ways to make revenue instead of selling policies, in my opinion. But now, I work for the largest tech vendor in our space, so maybe slated, that way a little bit for that. But I just, even on my show in Insurance Town, I hear people just saying it's not going to change. I don't know.
I think if anything, there's going to be more charges, like that post that was big on both LinkedIn and Facebook from David Carruthers last week, talking about the underwriting charges that carriers are going to start in, regular non-admitted lines. They're going to start charging underwriting charges. Carriers are going to find a way to increase their profits. So agencies better find a way to get their margins.
I completely agree. And that's your department, Carey, as far as getting those margins there. So you got some work ahead of you.
Well, I think, when people ask me that same question, because I get to talk to a lot of agents and what do I think is happening here? And I think it's not just, are we using technology and are we using data? It's, are we thinking about our team and what we focus on in order to get as efficient as possible in order to drive that margin? Because the reality is your people are your biggest expense. So if you are not maximizing the human resources inside your agency, you can't get to the same margin as others. Now, tech could be a tool that helps you do that. The infrastructure and the staffing structure and the utilization of VAs, all those things can be the tools. But if you don't get the people right, it's going to be really hard to drive that efficiency. And, I think that things like what Lindsay said about the fees, those are not going away. I've been in this industry for 16 years, and I hear more and more carriers are asking more of us. Carriers are doing less and paying us less. And now they're charging more for certain things. Like, we've got to be prepared. And the way we've always done it is not going to be the way we're doing it. Like, it just isn't going to be that way.
No, I completely agree. And I know that, it's not a new thing, but in commercial, there's a lot of fee-based, instead of, paying the premium. So I think you might start seeing that in personal lines as well, of maybe them charging an annual fee to do business with them. And then, they pay the premiums out of that. And maybe that's how agencies can make up for that. I think we'll see some creativity there. Maybe I think we'll see some different things with carriers. Again, going back to the fees and whatnot. I think we just have to make some serious adjustments. And also with AI, the sexiest two letters in the industry right now. And I think it's the most annoying two letters in the industry right now, but because that's all I ever hear about. But, I think that's going to make some major differences too. And as much as people say they don't want to replace humans with AI, they're going to.
Well, they're going to replace some of the tasks that humans have
Right.
responsibility for. It's not the entire person that's going to be
Right.
replaced. It's pieces. You got to think about it differently, and you can't think of, well, this is what a CSR is, and they have to do all these things exactly this way in order for me to run my agency. People that are thinking about it and stratifying the role and saying, I can automate this, I can use AI for that, I can use RPA in order to do this, I can whatever, I can stop doing this because it has no value. And all these things are changing the roles. And here's what I see. Prior to COVID, prior to remote work and the Great Resignation and all these crazy things that you say these names for, we had those that were innovating and those that were still very, very, the agencies that are still very successful, but doing it the way we've always done it. And there was a little bit of a divide. COVID made that divide even bigger. And now AI, the staffing changes, that divide is getting so large that you're never going to be able to jump over it. And it's creating the people who are going to acquire and the people who are going to be acquired. That's my take on the industry.
Yeah. No, I
Are you
completely
seeing
agree.
the same thing?
Yeah, completely. I think that you're not wrong in that at all. And I think you're probably closer to it than I am as far as from that standpoint. But, I did start seeing right after, right before, right during, I can't time, like COVID's such a blur. I don't know. Like I blacked out for 4 years, I feel like. But I did start seeing like the resurgence of the small agency and people like, those small agents, like, we're going to make it, we're going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. But then to your point, I think that, the divide is coming back. And I hate, part of me hates that because I wanted to see the mom and pop shop still be able to survive and do some of those things because of technology or because of this or that. But now, like you're saying, I think you're going to see, more back to the way it was, them getting merged or getting bought up or getting opportunities to do other things. So it's interesting where we're at right now. I still think it's the greatest industry on the planet, but I just think that it's changing.
Yeah, I would agree that it's the greatest, and I don't want to misconstrue this as being doom and gloom, because I think that M&A is actually creating an opportunity for those people that have experienced the industry, know the way we've always done it isn't going to work, get acquired, spin off, create their own agency and do it with tech and with innovation. And that's going to make our industry super healthy. It's going to be the future that Lindsay is going to be part of. And maybe I'm not going to be as much, you know what I mean? Like that makes me super excited about our industry.
Yeah, I think it's a needed, thing for our industry because my take is before COVID, we were 30 years behind every other industry in our, in our world, so to speak. And now, I think we're caught up. I mean, we're still behind in a lot of ways. I think fintech's ahead of us still, and I think some other things are ahead of us in other industries. But I still think, we're getting there. And I think to your point, if we can get to what you just talked about, that'll be where it'll be super interesting to see. Scary as it may be for some, I think we still need to embrace it and move forward in it.
Yeah, I think even offering just an alternative perspective, I think technology being on such a rise and having such creative technology use, like hate to bring AI back into the conversation since you say it's the most annoying buzzword, but
No, I get it.
Was in a I have like a small little networking group of young people in the insurance industry who were all like trying to do cool stuff just to check in on each other, see how things are going. And a couple of weeks ago, someone brought up the conversation of how are you guys using AI? And I think one of the coolest use cases that came out of that conversation was how I'm using AI is I'm new to the industry. I don't necessarily have the 20 years of experience to look at a Great American and a traveler's policy and tell an insured what's different between them. But you know what I do have? ChatGPT. And I uploaded those two bad babies right up into ChatGPT and I said, tell me the differences and answer these 5 questions about the policies. And I think that's going to take and give a small agency who doesn't have a lot of experience an opportunity to compete with a large agency who does have people who are crazy experienced and like insurance nerds. Like they don't have to use ChatGPT. They already know that stuff. I think it levels out the playing field a little bit if you get creative and utilize it in ways that give you a foot forward.
Yeah, and I think, on the other side of that, I think it's extending the careers of a lot of boomers out there. Not that they need to be extended anymore, not to offend any of your boomer listeners, but I think like my father, for example, he doesn't know how to even turn on his computer, but he's learned how to use ChatGPT once he does get it on and get moving. And it's helping him to be able to extend his career even more and be able to say, okay, how do I do this? I had to help him set up his Zoom account the other day. I'm like, it's 2024. Why didn't you have Zoom yet? But anyhow, at the same time, he's able to ChatGPT, okay, send, how to send this and what to do. And, it's helping him to be able to understand, and to stay ahead of the game. And I've taught him how to automate emails and do things so he could stay relevant. So I think on the flip side of that, young people are using it. But now I think some of the elder statesmen and experienced producers are getting able to extend their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're talking about AI and insurance, but I will tell you, we've had some things happen in our family where I'm more knowledgeable about health things than I've ever been more knowledgeable about in my entire life. So, but there are doctors that are looking at symptoms and using AI to come back and actually say, what are the possibilities? Our human brains are not able to hold all the information and see all the connections than what some powerful tools can do for us as well. So does that mean AI is going to replace doctors? Absolutely not. But does it mean that it's going to augment and maybe get people closer to a diagnosis quicker? 100 now, and it also might mean that there's mistakes, but humans make mistakes as well. So it's just it's interesting thing, right? But with all of that, when you were talking about AI and uploading policies, my data brain was going beep, beep, like, make sure you know what you're putting into ChatGPT and you're being responsible with what's in there. I know that there's some tools out there that allow you to have a closed space that isn't breaching any of the data rules. And I do not profess to know those data rules backwards and forwards, but anybody listening, don't freaking take advice here and do something crazy. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think once you upload that, becomes part of public record. So,
that's
you have
right.
to make sure you don't have socials and, bank accounts and whatever information, and I'm sure that your friend is very, careful with that, but
100%. Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot, once they add that feature to upload stuff into ChatGPT, it makes it even cooler to be able to do some of those things. And I've started using the other one, the Microsoft one. I think it's even, it's a cool one too. I forgot the name of it now. I had a brain fart, but hope you can't smell it. But I forgot the name of it though. But
I don't know that one. Actually, I'm a ChatGPT snob, basically.
Is it Copilot?
Copilot, yes,
Yeah.
Copilot. But anyhow, so and now I'm starting to see it on Facebook, in Messenger. You can now have that, or I'm seeing it in, all kinds of. Now they have Google Gemini. They have all kinds of generative AI
in HubSpot. If you're a HubSpot user, they have it integrated with HubSpot to write an email for you. Isn't that crazy?
I used that feature yesterday. It was really cool.
I haven't
just
used
to send
it yet.
an email.
It's just annoying right now. It pops up and blocks what I'm trying to do. But at some point, I'm sure I'll utilize it, and then we'll think it's amazing, and I'll use it for every email.
All I know is when I get off this call, I'm going to use that feature in HubSpot to email Heath and thank him for being on this podcast.
Oh,
We're
there
going
you
to test
go.
that baby out. How about
You
that?
should.
Yeah,
You should.
exactly. So we talked a little bit about tech, and I get it. You're with the largest tech company in the industry. We talked a little bit about, the divide that's happening. What do you think's going to happen to agencies given the new landscape of staffing? The fact that people want to work remote, there's this lean towards fractional work. If you look across all industries, like, what do you think that is going to do to our industry? Have you thought anything about that? Because we all lean towards the cool, sexy things, but at its core, like, what's going to happen with the people in our industry?
Man, that's a good question because I have my own personal opinion on it, but then, that's probably different from what may happen. But as you mentioned, the large company that I work with, they are looking now to own. I just came out recently, and I hope I don't speak out of turn with this. The Vertifor don't fire me, but we're even looking now to our future hires are going to be from the Denver area. We're not hiring remote workers anymore, or remote in the sense of outside of Denver. Thank God I got in before that, but it's just one of those things of, I find it now, they're not going to make them come to the office every day, but they want them to be able to come in for monthly meetings, weekly meetings, quarterly meetings, whatever it might be. My personal opinion on this, and maybe it's old school because I'm 23 years in, and I just think being in an office with people, I think there's just something to be said for that. And me personally, it'd be bad for me if I was working in an office with people, because I'd be wanting to chit chat and hang out and talk and water cooler talk, all that kind of stuff, just because I'm a social person. But I do think there's something to be said for jumping in a conference room for 30 minutes, having a little meeting or a powwow for something that's different over Zoom. You can still do all those things, but I just think there's something with body language and, being able to read and, see and touch and feel and just being in the room with somebody. I miss that aspect. I sit every single day in a room with four walls and no windows, and I'm like, man, it'd be so nice to be around people again. I feel like I'm in a padded room with all these soundproofing things, but it's a struggle. But I do think that, to get to your question, I think we're going to see even more unique feature. Like, what do you call those fractional type people? I never would have thought we'd had fractional CTOs or fractional CFO fractional. I think you're going to start seeing all kinds of random fractional. I don't know what the next one might be, but I just think you're going to see more and more of that, because I just think if you could find someone that can do it, like yourself for that matter, why not? If you've got the experience, you've got that history in your bag, I would say, this is what works in these agencies, this could work in yours. I think that's going to be huge. And I feel like Donald Trump, they're huge, but I think there's a lot of, sorry, that's my squirrel brain coming out. But I think that,
oh my God, that's hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious.
I think that the workforce is going to have some changes in it. I just think, I don't know.
I think the pendulum swings, doesn't it? Like, we have something happen. The pendulum swings all the way to the right, and then it's going to settle somewhere in the middle. But as it's doing that, it's creating all these different structures that are possible. And it's creating that we can have a hybrid. We can have a complete remote. We can have everybody's in person. But I think for our industry, it's pretty basic. We are relationship-driven people, no matter what. Yep. So I think it has to be a hybrid, and it has to be as flexible as it needs to be for whatever agency we're talking about. And I'm going to share a quick story. So I had a guy call me this morning. It was one of my first intro calls. When I go on vacation or I'm out of the office or I travel, I come back to all these 30-minute calls of people that reached out because they're interested in our services. And I'm not really good about blocking my calendar, so I'm literally one right after the other. So this morning, I had my team meeting, get on my first intro call, and the guy said, "Hey, I just want to know, where do you live?" And I'm like, that's just a weird way to start. And I said, I live in Hilton Head. And he's like, that's what they told me, but your number wasn't the right number, area code. And I wanted to be 100% sure before we went anywhere further that you're actually in Hilton Head. Are you on the island? Or are you, because people say they're in Hilton Head, but they're like 45 minutes away. And I said, no, I live in Palmetto Dunes. So I live in Hilton Head. And he said, great. I need to transition to my children, and I'm not doing it over Zoom. I want someone who can be physically in my office and work with me on this. Yeah, isn't that funny? And I'm like, I love the fact that I've got a client that wants to work face to face, because I too am a people person, and I'm like, this is amazing. But that's my point. Like the pendulum swings is my point, Now,
if he pulls up in a white van, be scared. But that's pretty creepy that he wanted to know. I'm just kidding. I'm sure he's a great guy. I do think, I think there's going to have to be some intentionality if you're going to make people come into the office, and not just, again, to what I was saying earlier. I think if you give too much freedom there, I am going to visit, I am going to talk and hang out and high five and not get my shit done. But if you have that intentionality, like you're going to have the meetings, you're going to have, okay, for this hour, we're going to be here, we're going to be doing this, doing that, and kind of pack the day with whatever needs to get done. I think it's going to be, better use of the time instead of just, hey, come in. I think, it was really cool back in, I guess, 2004, 5, 6, when Google first opened. It was like, oh, we have ping pong tables and we have beer pong and we can, do all these crazy things. I think people are like, oh, this is exciting, but those days are over. You can't come into the office and goof off and party all day. And, I think you have to have some intentionality there. I think that that culture can no longer be, and people that want to have nap pods in their office and people do things like that. I just think that's totally different. It might sound cool in theory, but I think there has to be some intentionality there.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I worked with an organization that had a really great idea that we were going to move from a really old, traditional workspace that has offices and cubicles and blah, 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 to we're going to be hip and cool and neat, and we're going to have an open workspace. We're going to have people can come and go, and we'll share the spaces, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and had high ceilings. Man, in about 30 seconds flat, you knew I am super distracted and in a place where I can hear everybody's conversations. So that's my point. The pendulum swings back and forth. And the number one thing that annoyed people was that damn ping pong table that people were playing, and it's out in the open and I can't hear on my phone call while you guys are getting rowdy. Like, all four are getting together and having fun, but we actually do need to run a business here, it's kind of funny. So
I'd be interested to hear, Lindsay, from your perspective. You're, half my age, if not more. We decided this on my show. I can't remember how much younger you were than me. I just know that you're a baby. But what are your thoughts? You kind of gave me a stanky look when I said something about Google and that whole, culture there. Do you agree, or do you wish it would go back to that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't wish it would go back to that. I think Google was way on like the end of the spectrum, and something that a small or even medium-sized insurance agency couldn't really replicate to scale and make it make sense. But I think that there is something to be said for not limiting your talent pool to just, and I'm not coming for Vertifor, but like, even we just hired someone at Indium, and we needed them to be in Columbus because we needed someone, this is going to sound bad, but we needed someone to pick up our mail and scan our mail. Carriers send a crap ton of mail. That's something I never knew, and you can't shut it off. So we needed someone to go to the office and pick up our mail and scan it and enter it into our system. So they had to be in Columbus, but we needed this person to also do plenty of other things, data-wise, and our talent pool was limited, and we felt those constraints. So I think, and that's conversations I've had with agencies. People call me all the time and say, hey, we're looking, do you know anyone? And I say, well, what kind of job are you offering for? And they're like, well, I'm in this small little town and I want the person to be within 30 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, I can't help you. Like, you're limiting your talent pool so much because you're resistant to this change, where if you opened even just a little bit, I want this person to come in once a month for a staff meeting, or twice a month for just an all-day meeting to check in. This person could live an hour away, and you are widely opening up your area, possibly even to like 2 or 3 large cities. So I think there's something to be said for limiting talent pools, but I also agree very strongly with when I'm in person, I get nothing done because I want to hang out, I want to chat, I want to build rapport more so than get a lot of stuff done. And so what I found to be very effective is coming in the office. So I work remote from South Carolina. The office is in Columbus, Ohio, for like a couple of days once a quarter, and having like a specific thing that we're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
and getting a whiteboard out and doing that and taking breaks often. I think that for me is the most effective because then I can come home, sit down with my laptop and actually focus and do my work. Even though I just had fun and got a bunch of like large stuff done at the same time.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that intentionality you have to have. Again, if you're
Yeah.
coming in, and that's what we do, when I go into Vertifoil, I'll go in once a quarter for 3 or 4 days or a week,
Mm-hmm.
and I get more done in that week, than I would ever thought I could have done. And we still have time, and they'll schedule even activities and go do,
Yeah.
some team building activity or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Now we're not doing trust falls or anything, but we're doing, bowling or putt or something
I'd love
random
to
in the
see you trust
evenings.
fall into Sid. I think that would be
Right? She would be
hilarious. It
crushed.
needs to be videoed.
Actually, I don't know. She's pretty strong. She
She is
probably could
very
catch me.
strong. Multiple Ironmans.
Yeah.
I think she could do it, but I think it'd be funny to watch.
Oh yeah, it would be very funny. I haven't said the word trust fall in 20 years, so that was fun. But,
it's going to happen now. Someone's going to ask Heath,
Yeah.
what kind of team building should we do? I think we should do trust falls. And by the way, I got this little camera here.
Yeah, let's do trust falls. Let's do some ropes courses. Anyhow, yeah.
Oh, wow, it's funny. So
I
funny.
think you're right though, Lindsay. I do think you have to have some intentionality in order to
Mhm.
be effective with your people in person. But I do think there always should be some avenue for remote work of some sort, whether it's hybrid or completely remote. But I don't know.
Well, I love that all three of us have such a positive view of the future of our industry, but we all agree it's changing. Like if you're not changing, it's going to be a tough road. It's just going to continue to be tougher and tougher because you're right. I don't think anything's going back to the way that it used to be. And honestly, I don't really want it to. Like I kind of like that it's forcing efficiency. I like that it is forcing people to think differently because that means we're moving forward. So, well, I want to do something a little different, Heath, because we started this with some bucket list things. Like I had a bucket list that I wanted to see a couple wonders of the world. You had a bucket list that you wanted to have a podcast that was actually on my bucket list as well. So I guess I want to round it out like what's still on everybody's bucket list. Do you guys want to share one or two things that are on either your personal or professional bucket list? I'd love that. Who wants to?
Yeah.
You want me to lead me off? Go for it, man.
I mean, right off the bat, my personal one for me is I want, and I'm counting down. You've been there, but my kids leave my house in like 9 years. All of them be gone 8 or 9 years, and so I've got a 6th grader as my youngest. I would love to do some more travel with my wife whenever that happens. Whenever we're done with all the sports and the schools and all the other practices, I want to just take off. In the first place, I want to go. I want to go to Greece. I want to go to the islands there. That's the first place that I want to go. Now I may lose because Stacy may want to go to Paris or something like that. But especially after watching the Olympics, it was cool to see that backdrop. Not to date the podcast, but that was really cool. But so I just travel. I'd love to do some more travel personally. I've never really left here. I've been like Canada and Mexico, but outside of that, I've never gone across the pond, so to speak. So
yeah,
big bucket list item.
Love it.
I think that's
How about you,
big
Linz?
for mine too. Mine might reach a little bit further.
Copycat.
I watched my mom travel to Vietnam, which I thought was a really cool travel. And Patrick, my fiance, has spent a lot of time in Asia and like that part of the world. So I'd like to go see that section, but I would also really, really like to see South America. Maybe not specifically like Galapagos in Peru, but it's a continent that I'm interested definitely in visiting.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
So bucket list for me, I'm not going to go travel because I love to travel and we do travel. In fact, like I make it a priority. We go on at least one big trip a year. And the trip that we just went on was actually scheduled for the year COVID happened. And we had to reschedule and whatever. And we finally made it happen. But my big bucket list is I want to write a book. I want to get published. I want to find the time to put some of this stuff down that I'm learning. And I have it, like it's all right here. I just need to focus and get that done. But I'd like to be published, and I want to make that happen soon. And I also want to get back to playing tennis on a regular basis. Like I gotta get some balance going. Like mine's more honed in bucket list rather than wide out. Like I think I need to swing my pendulum back a little bit. How about that?
No, I think that's awesome. And I think the whole book writing thing is interesting. My father just wrote a book, and he's writing another one. And, not saying this about you, but I always ask myself the question of like, with authors, is that an arrogance thing that people like, I want to write a book? Or is that something like, I just want to help people and I want to share my knowledge with people? I just always wonder where that's coming from. And I know there's probably both, answer both ways on that. But obviously, I don't think yours is arrogance. But I just sitting there thinking, and I tease my dad. I'm like, Dad, why are you so arrogant to think anybody wants to read your damn book? But I'm sure somebody will. But it's just, I don't know. But I think that's amazing. I always thought the same thing. I think it'd be cool to write a book. But I just, again, going back to why I didn't start a podcast sooner, it's like that little fear thing in me. But I think it's a really good bucket list item, though. I think I would buy 100 copies of your book.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think for me is when you put something in writing, you have to organize it in a way that someone else can follow. Yeah. And for me, I think I have so many lines of streams of thought that I want to be able to organize that in a way that someone could follow a journey and be able to get something from it. And I think we all are really unique, like our own experiences are unique. And I think there's always an opportunity to learn from others. And I've gotten the opportunity to learn from a ton of people that I think putting it down in a cohesive way would be a cool thing to do. So that, I don't know about arrogance. Like, I don't know, but I've had this title in mind for a while, and I can take it a couple different ways, which I think is kind of interesting. So yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
You're not going to share that?
Now I have you intrigued. See?
I know. You're just going to drop a teaser and leave me
No. Exactly. That's for you to, that's for me to know. And when I write my book, now you'll really read it. See?
Oh yeah.
And you'll buy 100 copies. You could replace like the felt in the back, your sound barriers, with copies of her book.
Oh yeah, 100%. That'd be a great sound barriers.
A wall of books. That'd be perfect.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, Heath, I got to tell you, I love chatting with you. I am super excited that you came on our podcast as a guest. It's always a little unnerving to interview one of the best interviewers out there. So thank you so much for being our guest. And I look forward to seeing you in person, my friend.
Yes, me too. Hopefully we will soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.